The government took $1.5 billion.
Government side, come to order.
Municipalities need that money for sewer lines, water lines, to build the infrastructure needed for new homes. I want those new homes to have sewer and water lines. They won't be built if it doesn't happen.
Question.
The government a year ago said they would make municipalities whole. They have failed to deliver that. Will they commit to it today, Speaker?
To reply, the Premier.
We have the member from Guelph on record, and I hope the media is listening to this. He's on record that he's going to vote for our infrastructure plan. He's going to vote for our housing plan. He's going to make sure he holds the mayor accountable. And by the way, I like your mayor. He just can't get up there and make a decision, so he always wants to pile it onto the province. And he's a good guy, actually. I like him. But your whole council in Guelph are a bunch of left-wing lunatics. Simple as that.
The Fellowship of Guelphissauga continues, with the Big Blue Orc hunting for the left-wing lunatics in the Shire. From the swamps of Toronto, he declared the entire Council of Elders a bunch of left-wing lunatics when questioned by Mike of the Shriners. The hunt began as several candidates stepped up by questioning their sanity. Meanwhile, Carly of Klassen and the Elder Elves were getting trolled on Xwitter for supporting the idea of guaranteed basic income. Can Carly of Klassen and the Elder Elves do anything about the housing cost crisis? And will the Big Blue Orc find the Shire's left-wing lunatics? The Big Blue Orc chuckled with his cabinet buddies after their meeting at Queen Lizard's Park. They couldn't get enough of his left-wing lunatic insult and wanted to go see more of the lunacy themselves. With the RCMP hot on their tails from the Greenbelt investigation, they devised a plan to get out of town for the weekend. The Big Blue Orc was reluctant to go at first, but his buddies convinced him with a quick Google search. "Check this out," the Big Blue Orc's buddy said as he showed him the search results on his phone. According to their local mental health association, there's so many left-wing lunatics in the Shire that 4,000 people are currently on the wait list for mental health care. Also, in a poll caught in Guelph, 68% of 2,700 people surveyed agreed with the Big Blue Orc statement about the lunacy. His buddies explained that apparently it's a thing in the Shire to let the left-wing lunatics run wild with the dogs at the off-leash dog parks. They wanted to see it firsthand, and the Big Blue Orc agreed to go since the RCMP was hot on his tail. The Big Blue Orc and his buddies arrived at the Shire's airport and hailed a cab. "Take us to the left-wing lunatics," they joked at the dog Uber as they dogpiled into the back seat. The dog driver didn't get the joke, but did understand enough of local politics and alliteration to know where to go. It drove them to Lloyd's of Longfield's office downtown, as the left-wing lunatics tend to lounge there. The Big Blue Orc paid the dog Uber an exact fare and entered the drab and dusty office. In the back corner sat Lloyd of the Longfields and Mike of the Shriners. Lloyd was there collecting his pickleball racket and gathering his personal belongings as he prepared for retirement, whereas Mike of the Shriners was there monitoring climate change. The Big Blue Orc and his buddies chuckled as they were getting closer in their hunt. The dog had brought them halfway there as they were looking for people who were both left-wing lunatics and on the Council of Elders. That's when the Big Blue Orc remembered the results of his buddy's earlier Google search. It should be easy to find the 4,000 people on the mental health care wait list, and one of those could be the left-wing lunatics on the Council of Elders. He called another dog Uber and told it to drive them to the local hospital where those waiting for mental health care should be. But when they arrived at the hospital, it was nearly empty, and the few staff there were in hazmat suits. "What's going on here?" the Big Blue Orc asked an overworked nurse wearing a biohazard suit. She explained how the hospital was doing a mock exercise aimed at testing its readiness for large-scale emergencies, specifically one for chemical decontamination. None of the 4,000 people on the mental health care waitlist were there that day due to the mock exercise. There was only one person sitting in the corner, waiting to get their next corona jab. It was Aaron of Caton. The Big Blue Orc and his buddies didn't bother Caton as she looked sick and stressed out. They didn't recognize her with her mailbox mask on as she buried her head into her phone. While she waited to get her next corona jab, like the CBC told her to do, she forwarded the Corporation of the Shire's microgrant application to her friends. It was the last day to apply, and she wanted to guarantee the best people for the grants were awarded. While the microgrants were open to everyone, people identifying as Black, Indigenous, or part of the LGBTQ community will be prioritized for funding. Disappointed in their failed attempt to find someone who's both a left-wing lunatic and on the Council of Elders, the Big Blue Orc and his buddies called another dog Uber back to the airport. They missed their opportunity at the hospital and simply gave up on their hunt. They had already wasted enough time to dodge questions from the RCMP, so they sat quietly and listened to the radio on the way back to the airport. But that's when the Big Blue Orc caught a bit of luck with his hunt. Coincidentally, the song playing on the radio was the #1 hit, Crybaby Caravan by James of the Gordon. As the Shire's artist-in-residence, his anti-convoy song was the type of left-wing lunacy the Big Blue Orc was hunting for. His buddies Googled the artist's band tour and noticed Gordon was a past member of the Council of Elders and currently on tour in Alberta. Luckily, the next stop on the artist-in-residence tour was back in the swamps of Toronto. As the Big Blue Orc and his buddies waited for their flight home to Toronto, they booked tickets for the upcoming concert. They chuckled in anticipation of catching the live event. Maybe they could sneak backstage and ask James of the Gordon personally if he knew any left-wing lunatics currently on the Shire's Council of Elders. Back at the Council of Elders chambers, Carly of Klassen and the Elder Elves were undisturbed by the Big Blue Orc's insults. They ignored him and instead focused on something that could possibly help with the housing cost crisis. Carly tabled a motion to have the council vote on supporting a federal-level guaranteed basic income. She won the vote 10-3, but received pushback from the mayor and Dan of the Gibsons. The mayor didn't fully support basic income since it didn't solely benefit property developers, and Gibson questioned the effectiveness of voting municipally to support a federal-level policy. Carly celebrated her successful council vote on Xwitter along with a link to all the research she had done on the topic. The trolls on Xwitter came out of the woodwork to criticize Carly's research and her definition of basic income. They called her fascist, communist, and all the other names as they raised red flags over the execution risk of basic income. In Carly's research, she wasn't clear enough about the necessary conditions of universal and unconditional on basic income needed to implement it properly. The trolls on Xwitter were concerned that basic income would be used to enslave the people, like the United Nations wants to do, instead of using it to free the people from economic slavery. Can Carly of Klassen and the Elder Elves do anything about the housing cost crisis? And did the Big Blue Orc find the Shire's left-wing lunatics? Stay tuned here to see. This video is brought to you by brighttutoring.ca. Don't let school get in the way of your education. Book a tutoring session today at brighttutoring.ca.